My name is Eleanor Whitmore. I'm 82 years old, and this is my story, the one I never thought I'd live to tell. It begins on the kind of day that makes the sky weep for you. A cold Georgia rain poured down as I stood on the porch I built with my own hands, locked out of the very house I paid for, by my own blood. That morning, I was sipping my lukewarm tea in the kitchen, humming an old Billie Holiday tune, when my daughter Lorraine walked in with her husband, Clint. Something was off. They didn't say a word, just exchanged glances like they were keeping a secret too sour to say aloud. "Mom," Lorraine finally said, "you need to pack a few things. We've decided it's time." "Time for what?" I asked. "For you to move into the assisted living facility we toured last spring. It's best," Clint added sharply, "for everyone." I laughed. I thought it was a joke. We hadn't toured any place, at least not together. But Lorraine didn't laugh back. She just stared at me. Cold. Distant. Like I wasn't the same woman who held her through the fever at 7 years old or sold her engagement ring to pay her first semester at Emory. "Lorraine," I whispered, "this is my home. I built this life for you. For the kids." "I know," she said, eyes fixed on the floor. "But things have changed." Then Clint walked over, and with a loud click, he locked the front door from the inside. I stood frozen. "You're not on the deed anymore," he muttered without meeting my eyes. I didn't understand. I'd never sold it. I never signed anything. That house was paid off 30 years ago. I still had the documents in my drawer, didn't I? Lorraine took my trembling hands and placed a duffel bag in them. "Your clothes. And some of your pills." Behind her, my 2 grandchildren, Amelia and Brandon, just teenagers, stood silently on the stairs, watching their grandmother be kicked out like a dog in the rain. I wanted to scream. I wanted to fight. But I was raised to hold dignity, even when the earth was crumbling beneath your feet. I stepped out barefoot, the rain soaking through my nightgown, thunder growling in the distance like it too was angry at what had just happened. The door slammed behind me, and for the first time in 53 years, I had no roof over my head, no place to call home, no family to turn to, just a broken heart and a fire quietly starting to burn in my bones. Where would I go? What would I do? Would I survive? Subscribe and turn on notifications so you don't miss what happens next in Eleanor's unforgettable journey. The rain didn't stop. It chased me down the street like shame. My legs were stiff, my slippers soaked through, and my hands trembled as I clutched the duffel bag my own daughter had packed like I was some stranger they'd found on the sidewalk. I didn't even have a phone. No wallet. No umbrella. Just the sound of my heart cracking in slow motion. I kept walking, past the corner where Lorraine learned to ride her bike, past the old Methodist church where we'd buried her father. Every corner of that neighborhood carried pieces of my life. And now I was nothing more than a ghost in it. After an hour of walking with nowhere in mind, I stopped at a bus shelter. There was no bench, just a cracked plastic panel covered in graffiti. I sat on my duffel, rain dripping from my chin. An older man in a blue poncho shuffled over and looked me up and down. "You okay, ma'am?" he asked. I wanted to lie, but the words came out broken and true. My family threw me out of my own house. His eyes softened. He didn't ask questions. He just took off his poncho and handed it to me. "World's gone cold," he muttered. "People don't honor their elders no more." That night, I slept at the back of a Waffle House, behind the dumpster. Rats scurried nearby. My hip throbbed from the concrete. But somehow I didn't cry. I stared at the moon and thought of all the sacrifices I made. I gave Lorraine everything. When her father died in that sawmill accident, I worked 3 jobs. I never bought myself a car, never went on a vacation, never dated again. I poured every drop of my life into hers. So how could she look me in the eyes and lock me out? The next morning, I found myself at the county records office. I'd remembered something. A faint memory. 5 years ago, Lorraine brought me a refinancing form to sign, said it was for lower property taxes. I trusted her. That was the moment I unknowingly signed my name off the deed. She'd transferred it to a trust, with her husband as the executor. And I had nothing. The young clerk at the desk looked uncomfortable. Ma'am, legally, the property's no longer under your name. But I built that house, I said softly. With my husband. With my bare hands. I'm sorry, she whispered.
So was I.
But not for long. Because in that moment, something shifted inside me. I might have been old. I might have been thrown out into the rain. But I wasn't broken. Not yet. I would find a way to stand again. And when I did, they would see the strength of a woman who had nothing left to lose. Because I had a secret they didn't know. A secret I hadn't told anyone in over 30 years. And that secret? It was about to change everything. Don't miss what happens when Eleanor begins uncovering the past to fight for her future. Hit that like, comment your thoughts below. 30 years ago, before Lorraine was old enough to spell mortgage, I made a decision that would one day save my life. Back then, my husband Walter and I had saved up a little money from his work at the sawmill and my weekend sewing jobs. We bought a tiny plot of land in a quiet part of Georgia. When Walter died in that horrible mill accident, I was left with the land and a pile of bills. But I didn't sell. No, I kept that land and paid off the property taxes year after year from scraps and tips. What no one knew, not even Lorraine, was that the land was never in the same name as the house we lived in. We had separated them legally on purpose, for tax reasons. That land, now worth over $400,000, was still mine, tucked away in a legal blind spot no one thought to look at. Untouched, unclaimed, undeveloped. Until now, that land was my secret, and it was about to become my salvation. But first, I needed help. I went to an old friend, Miss Janie Hollowell. She and I used to teach Sunday school together, and she had once been a paralegal before retirement. When she opened the door and saw me standing there, dirty, shivering, and tired, her jaw dropped. Eleanor Whitmore, Lord in heaven, what happened to you? I told her everything. Over warm tea and cornbread, I told her how Lorraine and Clint had stolen my home. I told her about signing that deed years ago. And then I told her about the land. Her face lit up like she'd found gold. You kept that secret all these years? I nodded. For Lorraine, for later. But she showed me I don't owe her anything anymore. The next day, we went down to the county office. Janie pulled some strings with an old contact and helped me verify the land was still in my name. She grinned wide when the clerk confirmed it. Still untouched. You can build whatever you like on it, Miss Whitmore.
Build.
That word felt like hope. That same day, Janie made a few calls. Her nephew was a contractor. Said he'd do a modular home cheap for me if I paid in cash. I didn't have much, but I had one last secret left. A metal biscuit tin, hidden in the back of my closet for decades, buried behind yarn balls and old shoeboxes. That tin held close to $19,000 in bills, savings from years of sewing dresses, babysitting, and pinching every dollar that passed through my hands. It wasn't much, but it was enough. Enough to build a small, one-bedroom home on that land. A place of my own. A place they couldn't touch. As the foundation was being poured, I stood on the edge of the land, watching the red clay turn solid under the workers' boots. Lorraine had taken my house, but I was building a legacy. One she would never control. One her children would wish they hadn't laughed at. Because this new home, it wasn't just for me. It was the beginning of my plan. A plan that would make them regret ever crossing me. But first, I had to wait. Wait until they needed help. And when they came crawling, I would be ready. Want to see how Eleanor's quiet revenge begins to unfold? Drop a comment and hit that subscribe button. The house went up faster than I expected. Within 2 months, my tiny one-bedroom sanctuary stood proudly on the corner of an old gravel road. Painted a soft blue with white trim, it was no mansion, but it was mine. Every nail, every beam, every inch of it was freedom. Janie called it the comeback cottage. I called it justice. I'd planted rose bushes out front by hand, the same way I used to do with Walter. Each thorny branch felt like a symbol of pain, of survival, of blooming even when cut down. But even as I stood in my kitchen, sipping tea in a house no one could throw me out of. I couldn't shake the ache in my chest. I missed my grandchildren. Not Clint, not Lorraine. But Amelia and Brandon, they had once called me Nana Ellie and begged me for banana bread after school. They'd fallen asleep on my lap while I read them bedtime stories. And yet, they stood silent that day I was thrown out like a stray dog. I couldn't forgive that. But I couldn't forget either. That ache turned into fuel. So I did what no one expected an 82-year-old woman to do. I opened a business. Right from my front porch. Ellie's Home Bakes was born with a handwritten sign, 3 folding chairs, and a borrowed recipe book. I sold banana bread, peach pies, and cornbread muffins to the locals, truck drivers, nurses, young mothers, retired war vets. At first, it was slow. Then something beautiful happened. A woman named Sandra posted about me on Facebook. Y'all ever tasted heaven on a paper plate? Miss Ellie's banana bread is a miracle. Buy from her. Support our elders. Within a week, I had a line out the gravel drive. Word spread fast in small-town Georgia. By month 4, a local morning show came to film a segment. They asked about my story. I didn't name names. I didn't have to. I just said some folks think older women are weak, but the strongest roots are buried deepest. People ate it up, both my words and my pies. Then came the knock on the door. I'd recognize that voice anywhere. Mom, Lorraine. I opened the door slowly, wiping flour from my hands. There she stood in a designer coat, her mascara running. Behind her was Clint, face tight and stiff. And in the back seat of their expensive SUV, Amelia and Brandon, both older, both quiet. We need help, Lorraine whispered. The house, we lost it. Turns out, Clint had used my house as collateral for a shady business loan. They defaulted. The bank took everything. Everything. Except my land. My home. My success. She looked up at me with eyes full of desperation. I know what we did was wrong, Mama. I was stupid. I let him talk me into it. We've been living in a motel. The kids are suffering. I stared at her for a long, cold minute. The same woman who locked me out in the rain now stood asking for mercy. I made your favorite, I finally said. Banana bread. Want a slice? She nodded quickly, tears falling down her cheeks. I handed her one piece. One slice. But no shelter. Not yet. Because forgiveness isn't served fresh out of the oven. It's earned. And they were just beginning to understand that. Don't miss what happens next as Eleanor takes control, one quiet act at a time. Like, comment, and subscribe. Lorraine and Clint came back the next day. And the day after that. At first, it was just for banana bread and peach cobbler. But by the end of the week, they weren't coming for food. They were coming for mercy. Their story unraveled slowly. Clint's investment firm was nothing but smoke. He'd borrowed against the house using fake documents and shady lenders. Once the scam cracked open, the bank didn't waste time. Foreclosure happened in weeks. Their credit? Destroyed. Their reputation? Even worse. No one would hire Clint anymore. Lorraine's job at the real estate office? Gone. No one trusted her after the truth came out. Amelia had dropped out of college. Brandon had been caught stealing snacks at a gas station. They were living in a motel, for people crammed into a room with a flickering ceiling light and broken heater. I listened. I nodded. But I didn't invite them inside. Instead, I offered them pie. Sit on the porch, I said. That's where you told me to go, remember? Lorraine's face crumbled, and for once, she didn't talk back. She sat quietly, her hands clasped tightly in her lap. Clint didn't look at me. He stared out at the gravel driveway, chewing each bite like it was his last. I wasn't cruel, but I wasn't soft either, because every porch visit, every crumb they ate, was a reminder of what they threw away. Word around town was spreading. People whispered about what Clint did, what Lorraine allowed, and suddenly, the same people who once envied their perfect life were now driving past my little blue house for muffins and inspiration. One afternoon, a man in a suit approached my table. He introduced himself as Marcus Ellison, real estate developer from Atlanta. He'd seen the segment about my baked goods and came for more than dessert. "Miss Whitmore," he said, "this place is heart. And land like this? It's gold. Ever thought of expanding?" I laughed. "At my age." He grinned. "With your story, you could have your own cafe. Maybe even a product line. We'll handle the business. You just keep baking." Janie nearly fell out of her chair when I told her, "Ellie, you're about to become rich. You hear me?" I shook my head and smiled. "I'm not doing this to get rich. I'm doing it to show my daughter something money never bought." She raised a brow. "What's that?"
Dignity.
By the end of the month, we signed a partnership. Ellie's Home Bakes was officially a registered business. I had a logo, packaging, and 2 hired staff from the local church, women my age who, like me, had been written off by their families. We wore aprons with the phrase, "Too old? Watch us." Meanwhile, Lorraine stopped by again. But this time, she didn't ask for pie. She asked for help with a place to stay. Not for herself. For Amelia. "She's not like us," Lorraine whispered. "She wants to work. She wants to fix things. Please, Mama, just talk to her." I stared at my daughter, and for a moment, I saw the little girl I once braided hair for, the one who used to beg me not to leave her on the first day of school. I didn't answer. I just walked inside and came back with a small key on a yellow ribbon. "There's a spare room in the shed," I said. "She can earn her way. Not a handout, but a hand up." Lorraine took the key with shaking fingers. "Thank you." "No," I said softly. "Thank Amelia. She still remembers who I am." And in the shadows of the driveway, Clint sat behind the wheel of that dusty SUV, watching it all fall apart, quietly. Things are shifting fast. Will Eleanor's business soar, or will more storms come her way? Don't miss next chapter. Like, comment, and hit that subscribe button if you're rooting for Nana Ellie. Amelia moved into the shed the next morning. It wasn't much, just a small room I'd converted for storage, but it had a cot, a warm blanket, and something she hadn't felt in months. Peace. She was different from her parents. Quieter. Hungrier, but not for food. For purpose. "Thank you, Nana," she said, hugging me tighter than I expected. "I just want to make things right." That broke me in places I didn't know still ached. We made a deal. She'd wake up early, help me with baking prep, and work the register on market days. If she wanted to earn her keep, she'd earn it right beside me. Day by day, she kept showing up, apron tied crookedly, flour on her nose, cheeks red from the oven heat. The girl who once laughed while her parents evicted me was slowly unlearning their cruelty. And I was learning how to let love bloom in burnt soil. But Clint wasn't done. Not by a long shot. One Wednesday morning, as the line outside the bakery stand stretched past the gravel lot, I noticed a silver sedan parked across the road. Inside was Clint, watching us. Just watching. I ignored it, but Amelia didn't. "He's been following us," she whispered later that night. "He parks down the street and just sits." The next morning, I found one of our signs torn down. Later that week, someone smashed a crate of our pies in the delivery shed. Nothing stolen, just destroyed. It wasn't hard to guess who. So I filed a police report. Clint might have stolen my house, but he wasn't about to steal my peace. Sheriff Daniels, a man who used to buy apple fritters for me when he was a boy, personally drove down to the motel. "I know what you're up to," he told Clint. "One more stunt, and you're going to jail. You've done enough." Clint backed off. For now. But snakes don't disappear. They wait in the grass. Back at the house, things were changing. My business was growing. People were ordering from out of state. A local reporter asked to do a follow-up feature, the grandma who baked her way back. But what they didn't know, what no one knew, was that my plan wasn't just about baking. It was about ownership. One afternoon, I called Janie. "Can I buy the land around me?" I asked. She grinned. "Ellie, you thinking of expanding?" "No," I said. "I'm thinking of fencing." I bought the 2 lots that bordered my property, the same lots Clint had once tried to snatch when they were cheap. Then I installed a privacy fence. Not just around the property, but through the gravel driveway that Clint used to sneak through with his car. He couldn't park, couldn't watch, couldn't touch us anymore. When Lorraine came by that weekend, she noticed the fence. "You did this to keep us out?" she asked. I didn't flinch.
No.
I did this to keep myself safe. Something you forgot to do when you handed my house to a man who gambled it away. She didn't argue. She just looked down at the pies cooling on the table, her face sunken in defeat. I almost felt sorry for her. Almost. But then I remembered the rain, the locked door, the silence of my grandchildren. That moment was burned in me forever. They thought they were burying me, but I wasn't buried. I was planted, and I was growing. The tension is rising, and Eleanor's power is only just beginning. What happens when Clint crosses the line again? Hit that like, comment, and subscribe for next chapter. It's going to be explosive. The first rock shattered my kitchen window at 2:13 a.m. I was in bed, curled under my floral quilt, when the glass burst inward like a shotgun blast. I sat up, heart pounding, ears ringing. Amelia came running from the shed, barefoot and wide-eyed. "Nana, are you okay?" We called the police. They found tire tracks along the back fence line, and another rock with a note tied to it. "This isn't over. You owe us." The handwriting was Clint's. I'd seen it on the deed, transfer, all those years ago. This time, Sheriff Daniels didn't knock. He banged on Clint's motel door with backup. They arrested him for harassment and vandalism. He screamed the whole time, something about how I stole his life and turned my daughter against him. Lorraine was there too, her arms crossed, her eyes empty. She didn't even flinch as Clint was taken away in cuffs. Later, she knocked on my door. "I didn't know he'd go this far," she said. "I swear." I stared at her. Didn't know, or didn't care? She didn't answer, just stood there, her fancy purse clutched to her chest like a shield. "We have nothing left, Mama. You won. Is that what you wanted?" "No," I said calmly. "I didn't want revenge. I wanted peace. But you brought war to my doorstep." Her face twisted like a little girl caught lying. I almost told her to leave. But then Amelia stepped forward, wiping flour from her hands. "Mom, you should go. Nana gave me a job. A home. Something you never gave her." Lorraine opened her mouth to argue, but closed it. For the first time in a long time, she looked small, like the weight of her choices finally sat heavy on her shoulders. She left without another word. A week later, I got a letter in the mail. From a lawyer. Turns out, Clint had put my former home, my old home, in Lorraine's name again before the bank seized it. And now that Clint was facing criminal charges, the bank wanted to settle the debt quietly. They offered me the chance to buy it back. For pennies on the dollar. Janie nearly spit out her sweet tea when she read the offer. "Ellie, you could own that house again. The one they kicked you out of." I shook my head. "I don't want that house anymore." "But think about the poetry," she said. Coming full circle. I did think about it. And then I made a decision. I bought the house. Not to live in it, but to donate it. To a local women's shelter for older women who had been displaced, forgotten, or mistreated by their own families. It would be called the Whitmore House, in memory of the woman I used to be, and in honor of the woman I became. Amelia helped me paint the sign. On opening day, a local news crew came out again. I stood in front of the camera with a pie in one hand and keys in the other. "This house used to belong to me," I said. "It was taken from me by people I loved.
But now?"
It belongs to women who need a second chance." The crowd applauded. Even the mayor showed up to shake my hand. Back at my new home, Amelia and I sat on the porch, watching the sun melt behind the hills. She leaned her head on my shoulder. "Nana, I'm sorry for everything." I kissed the top of her head. "You showed up," I whispered. "That's what matters now." But just when I thought the story had reached its peaceful end, a black SUV pulled into my driveway. The license plate? Not from Georgia. And the man who stepped out? Wearing a suit, holding a briefcase. "I'm looking for Eleanor Whitmore," he said. I nodded slowly. "That's me." He smiled. "Ma'am, you're being sued." A lawsuit? From who and why now? You won't believe the final chapter of Eleanor's battle. Tap that like, leave your thoughts, and subscribe to this channel. It all comes down to this. The man in the suit adjusted his glasses and handed me a thick envelope. Inside was a lawsuit filed by Clint Reynolds from county jail. He was suing me for emotional distress, claiming I'd orchestrated a public humiliation campaign, destroyed his marriage, and intentionally ruined his financial standing. He was asking for $150,000 in damages. I laughed, out loud, right there on my porch. Amelia peeked over my shoulder and blinked. He's serious? Oh, he's a fool, I said, folding the papers neatly. But even fools get access to lawyers in jail. We took the matter straight to Janie's lawyer friend, Mr. Behrens, an old Southern gentleman with white eyebrows so big they looked like clouds. He chuckled through the entire meeting. "This thing has more holes than a colander," he said, slapping the papers. "He's got no case, but he does want attention. Might be hoping for a settlement." I didn't flinch. "We fight," I said, "all the way." And so we did. Court date was set for 3 weeks later. By then, word had already spread. The story was everywhere, local news, online blogs, even a segment on a regional morning show titled "Nana Fights Back, a Georgia Grandmother's Battle for Justice." The courtroom was packed. Reporters, locals, even a few of the women from the Whitmore house came wearing Team Ellie buttons. Clint looked rough, unshaven, bitter, still arrogant. He represented himself, which was a mistake. He rambled, accused, pointed fingers. I lost my family,
My job.
my home, all because she wouldn't let me fix it. The judge, a stern black woman in her 60s, looked unimpressed. Mr. Behrens stood and calmly laid out the facts. I was kicked out of my own home with no legal notice. Clint used forged documents and manipulated trust paperwork to take my property. I never spoke publicly about their names or blamed them directly. Clint had been arrested for harassing me. He closed his argument with a simple line. "Your Honor, this man is not a victim. He is a cautionary tale." The judge didn't need long. Case dismissed. With prejudice. Clint's face went pale as the gavel came down. He turned to look at Lorraine in the back row. She didn't meet his eyes. She picked up her purse and walked out. Alone. The courthouse clapped. But I didn't smile for show. Because I hadn't fought just for me. I fought for every mother who sacrificed for their child only to be discarded. I fought for every elder whose wisdom was dismissed, whose value was tied to what they could still give. And most of all, I fought for the woman I used to be, the one who stood barefoot in the rain, thinking she had nothing left. That woman now owned 3 properties, a bakery brand shipping nationwide, and a home filled with women who called her Mama Ellie. Amelia stood beside me outside the courthouse, holding my hand. "You won, Nana," she whispered. I looked at her and smiled. "No, baby, we won." This story isn't just fiction. It's a mirror. To every grandmother, mother, or woman who's ever been cast aside, let this be your reminder. You are not done. You are not weak. You are not broken. Sometimes, the deepest betrayal leads to the most beautiful beginning. If this story moved you, please like, comment your thoughts below, and hit that subscribe button. New stories every week. And remember, never underestimate a woman who's been underestimated.